Speaking of DC, like you're saying, especially during the '80s, during the rougher times, during the crack area, you saw a lot of deaths, like what you see in Chicago today.
Mm-hmm.
For you, what was it like during that time?
For me, it was some bad decisions, some good decisions. Education was important, so I got education, but I also made mistakes. And one of those mistakes sent me to federal prison for the better part of 10 years for drug trafficking. I was part of my environment of DC at that time. The lure of fast money, being able to do things and get things before the normal process of life. But I look at it now as a curse that turned into a blessing. When I was in prison, I got time to think. I got time to really set a fundamental plan of what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I got to see laws change. Before I came into prison, you had to be an adult to be a federal prisoner, to be charged with a federal crime. I saw the law change to where they could charge and sentence anybody from 10-year-old a life sentence, or you give him 70 years. He's going to do all of that time. That's a young man that never even had a chance to live that could possibly die in prison, doing more time in prison than he did on the street. And when that came to the realization for me, I said to myself, when I go home, I'm going to be part of the process to fix things, because I was part of the process to make the problem. I coached youth. I gave my time speaking. This before Jalil was born. Then when he was born, my son Robert, my other son Carlin, everything to me was, how do I make my boys productive citizens? When anybody asks me a question about Jalil, boxing isn't the first thing I bring up. First thing I bring up is when he was in third grade, they thought he was a genius. He tested so well, and he's been able to take college courses. He was accepted to Johns Hopkins. These are the things. I keep a picture of the application on my phone. I showed you. I want a productive part of society. When you look at boxing, people want to think the worst. But when you really think about it, out of all the pro sports, the people who get in the least amount of trouble are the guys who are pugilists. Those are the guys who get in the least amount of trouble. Boxers are family men. Boxers are isolated people. So their inner circle is so small to the point where you don't hear about them. You look at Floyd Mayweather Jr. You didn't hear about Floyd outside of when he had a fight coming up. The big flashy cars, the big fancy stuff. We saw Floyd at his gym one time. He pulled up in a Suburban by himself. Because they're isolated people. And if I can make my son the type of young man that can financially prosper, but be able to give back to help somebody else, that will be the biggest success to me, not winning a world title. A world title is an accomplishment through sports that you're able to do. But I've never seen anybody who said in their biography, my life was based on I won a world title. When that time comes for him, I want people to say that he was the type of man that you want your kids to grow up to be. He was the type of man that was willing to help anybody. He was the type of man that he used his ability to make others better. If that can be said about him, then on my tombstone, they can say he made a U-turn and he made the dandelions in the grass turn into roses. That to me is great. So when I hear things about my son like the boxing's LeBron James, I also want him to understand LeBron James has started a school. LeBron James helped some young guys that played basketball with him turn into business entrepreneurs. So don't just be the LeBron James, the athlete. Be the LeBron James, the man.
Speaking of your father's life experiences, what did you learn from, has he ever had those conversations with you, just talking about choosing the right friends, making sure that, you choose wisely on the choices that you make in life? Talk about that.
Oh, no, definitely. We always talk in that aspect of life because it's like, despite being an athlete, you always have to look out for these type of things. So I've definitely always looked at it, and it's like, oh, I could never see myself in that situation. But he said still, always pay attention to people who are in those situations, because that could have easily been you. He always says, like, I took a fall for you to be a better person. So always I'm not gonna say be careful, but be thankful and be blessed of the situation that you're in now.
Have you ever lost any friends to the streets?
It's crazy. This time I have, like, I used to look at like elementary school like class pictures, and it's about 2 or 3 of them that they gone now, or they probably incarcerated. But I always think, I'm like, man, I'm thankful that I chose sports instead of that, and I have a family around me that made sure I stayed away from those type of situations.
You know, Mom, I have to ask, you know, with sons, you know, is it, do you put more of a protective shield over him, knowing everything, the elements of the streets?
Definitely. I mean, I was always on the academic side. My husband's always on the sports side. So we kind of brought the two together because we knew that the academic side would keep them educated so they can be well prepared for what's going on afterwards. And then the sports side kept them busy and kept them, my boys have done so many sports that we've been a part of: football, basketball, they played lacrosse at one time, they've run track. So they've always been busy in something so that they won't get that other side. Even though it's right there, you know, you can't get away from it. But that helped them a lot to stay out of any kind of trouble that might have come their way, because they were so busy. So they didn't have time to really get involved in anything that was outside of it. But they're aware of it because it's right there at your front door. But being young black men, it always is a concern for a mother, just always.
You know, speaking of the education side, he will be graduating early. That's a heck of an accomplishment to do that at the age of 16. Why was it important for you, Jalil, to take the night classes and things of that nature to graduate early?
I feel like it felt mandatory to me, because it's like, it's a part of the stages of being great, not only like in the ring but outside of the ring. Oh, you got a kid that's he's getting out of school a year early to pursue a lifelong dream. So, and then on top of that, my dad, if you don't know, he graduated early. What year you graduated?
I graduated in 1990, actually a year early. I came out of school right after I got my driver's license, actually. I got my driver's license in February. I graduated in June from Spingarn High School. DC product, born and raised, 202 for me.
Same here, 202, class of 90, Dunbar High School.
Yeah, so, and my daughter, Mariah, she did the same thing. She went to Cardozo too. She graduated early. She has an undergrad. She has a master's degree. You know, so education is a big part of our household. It's not just the sports aspect. My wife focuses in on the education aspect, and we try to make, like I said, well-rounded young men and women. Like I said,